Hi, this is Jason Nickleby, Coordinator of Officials with the Minnesota State High School League, and this is basketball officiating training tape number 6. Going to take a look at another 8 plays today. Something to keep in mind as we move through the season. We're doing a nice job out there, working hard with masking and the other COVID protocols. Appreciate your diligence with that. Another reminder, just keep working on officiating our primary areas of responsibility and make sure that we do those well before trying to focus our attention elsewhere. That's just something to keep in mind as we move through the season. So when we're looking at these plays, not picking any one official or crew or team, just trying to learn from these plays and how we can adjust our mechanics and philosophy and put these together for plays for this season. So with that, we'll take a look at some plays. On this play, we're going to have a 3-point shot attempt right in front of the bench, and then we're going to have a rebound to the weak side with a rebounding foul called by the center. So we're in good position. Lead widens out nicely and then is stationary at the shot attempt to view rebounding action. And the trail is right at the 28-foot mark, so that's good. We can see the shooter up and down all the way. And then let's take a look at the rebounding action. The defensive player does a nice job of getting in good blockout position, doesn't displace the defender, does exactly what she's supposed to do as it relates to establishing that position. And then 45 plays through her back to get to the basketball and is properly called for a foul by the center. Remember, there's no such thing as over the back. They have to actually go through the back or push or displace those kinds of pieces. In this particular case, she plays through the back. She does reach over the top, which is fine. You can reach over the top without contact, but when we have contact playing through the back, that's enough for a foul and is properly called. And I like how the lead closes in. When we have players hit the floor like this, we close and have a presence so they know we're there. So that's a great job by the lead. And also the center does close down as well, does spot mechanics by indicating that we have a foul that will result in a throw-in, a hold, and then we're going to go the other way, and then we jog out to the reporting area to report to the table. So overall, this is really good coverage where we want to be. We pick up the foul, we close, have a presence, and then we put the throw-in in the proper spot as well. So this is well done by the crew on this play. Good job of officiating our primary area and having outstanding mechanics and then finishing the play well. On this play, we come down in transition and we get into our initial position, and then we have contact with the dribbler right around the B of the Big Ten logo called by the center. So let's talk about our initial coverages and responsibilities. So remember that we need to be ready to officiate our primary coverage areas in the front court right away. We don't get to settle in. We don't get a little time to adjust. We have to get to our initial position and then officiate our primaries to the best of our abilities. So let's talk about what we should be doing from a primary initial coverage when we come into the front court. So once we cross the division line, okay, the trail is going to have the dribbler in this case because she is on the other side of the lane line from the center's area. Okay, now typically in the paint, we are going to draw a line down the middle of the lane, and everything to the left of that, as we're looking at it on this screen, would be the trails, and everything below that and to the left would be the lead, and then the center would have everything from that midline down the middle of the paint towards them. So with that in mind, take a look at this play. We have a dribble drive. It stays in the trail's primary area of responsibility pretty much the whole time, because remember, trail has her here. She goes into the free throw semicircle and then attempts a drive down the far lane line from the center. Remember, the free throw semicircle is in the trail's primary area of responsibility. So if we have initial contact, a travel, something that we have to rule on, that is the trail's primary responsibility in that free throw semicircle area. Okay? And then even if there is no contact in that free throw semicircle and it gets to the BN big, that's on the other side of that lane, or that imaginary line down the middle of the lane. And that's the line of demarcation between the center's primary and the trail and the lead. So when it gets to that B, that's kind of a tweener, but it's really only a tweener between trail and lead and not between center and trail or lead. So this is an arm bar and is properly called as a foul by the center, but what I'd like to see is some more patience from center and allow trail to officiate this in his primary responsibility area. So to recap that, trail has this player all the way down, still in his primary responsibility area, continues in the trail's responsibility in the free throw semicircle, and when we are at that B in the Big Ten logo. And if it gets further down towards the end line, it would now be in the lead's primary area of responsibility, and this would be a secondary ruling for the center. And if you pause it at the time of contact, the center is really not in the best position to view this contact. This really would be a better call for trail or lead. However, it is an arm bar and it is a foul. If we don't maintain legal guarding position legally by getting there with 2 feet facing the opponent and then moving laterally, obliquely, backwards, rising vertically in our vertical plane, or initiating contact into the dribbler, that's now a foul charge of the defense, which is what happens in this particular play. She sticks out the arm bar to impede her dribbling. She knocks off her rhythm, balance, quickness, and she loses the basketball because of the arm bar. So this is properly called as a foul. The only thing I'd like to see is just a little bit more patience from center and allow trail to officiate their primary area of responsibility. Perhaps lead would pick it up. And then if we truly have an arm bar like this with displacement, losing the basketball, and the center gets this play, I'm fine with it. But let's just take another 2 or 3 seconds, allow trail to process, and then we can come in if we really, really have to. On this play, we're going to cover transition coverage and mechanics, front court coverage, and then we'll talk about free throw mechanics. So on this particular play, we're in transition. Ball comes to the side of the court right in front of the bench there, and the lead is in a rotation, and we have a drive to the basket and a foul in the paint, ultimately called by the lead, which is correct. And on plays of this nature in the middle of the paint like this, we really should defer to the lead, which we do here, which is nice. The only thing I would say, leads, is you're going to close down if the ball's on the other side of the court, which we do here, but maybe take another second to decide if we're going to rotate. Give the ball a chance to settle on that side before we rotate, and then we can go ahead and do that. But we become stationary, see the play, rule on the contact, so that's all good. Now let's transition to the free throw mechanics. So we go to the reporting area, report what we have. We have C opposite now. Lead bounces the ball to the thrower, indicates the number of free throws, and you'll see that the lead is in the 4x4 position, which is what we want. Remember, we want to be roughly 4 feet outside the lane line and roughly 4 feet off the end line as our position on all free throws as the lead. And we can be a little bit lower this year, but typically right underneath the rim to bounce past the ball to the free throw shooter is where we want to be. Secondly, center, your position, you'll see here right at the beginning of the free throws again, we're indicating the number of free throws. We confirm that's all good, but we should be closer to where it says the PAV there on the court. We should be right on about the T for our position. And the reason we need to be there is, remember, mechanically for violations, we are looking to the opposite lane line and taking all three of those players and the free throw shooter as our area of responsibility, and the lead will have the opposite lane line from them, which is nearest the center. So we need to be on the T for where it says the PAV. That's where we need to be for free throws. And then when the free throw is released and we are going to start or stop the clock potentially, then we would just go down that 3-point line 2 or 3 steps, close down on the free throw attempts, with our hand raised in the air. For trails, we need to be at the center court line, basically with that lane line closest to the table. If we drew a line straight out to center court, that's about where we would be, right on the right side of the jump circle. And then we would move to the 28-foot mark on the table side, okay, as we're going to be shooting that last free throw. That's when we should move to that location, okay? So that's our positioning for all these 3 officials. Now let's look at this last free throw attempt. This is the first one. It's successful. The trail is responsible for bringing in substitutes, which we have here. They should have their hand in the air, stop sign to the partners until we count 5 players for both teams, then give the go-ahead to the lead to administer the final free throw, which we do here. Now look at the player on the low block. She violates. The free throw is unsuccessful. Remember that when that is on the opposite lane line, this should be the center's responsibility to look for this violation and call this. Now it ultimately gets called by the lead, and that's okay. At least it got called by someone, but the primary responsibility should come from center, since we have all 3 of those players on the opposite lane line. The final piece to add here is when we have a free throw violation like this, that is a delayed dead ball situation, and we should indicate that we have a delayed dead ball situation by putting a fist out to our side. And if the free throw is ultimately unsuccessful, as it is in this case, then we would blow the whistle, indicate the violation, and shoot another free throw. If the free throw is successful, then we just drop our arm and fist. So we don't do that here. We ultimately call the violation, but we should have a fist out to the side until the free throw is either successful or unsuccessful, and then we would move forward from there. So let's take a look at our overall positioning on free throws, make sure we're in the right spot, and then let's review our responsibilities and coverages as it relates to free throws, who has what and where, to make sure that we don't miss anything on these kinds of plays. On this play, we have a dribble drive down the lane line nearest the table. We have initial legal guarding position established and maintained legally. There is some contact, but we allow the defender to continue to play legal defense, and we no-call this play properly. We have a made basket, and on the ensuing throw-in with pressure, it is going to hit the backboard, and the defense is going to get the ball back and score. So a couple things. First, our positioning is good. Lead, we close down to the lane line and we're stationary at the time of a potential foul or contact, and we're in good position to view this play. And then center and trail, we're working low, at least our initial position, maybe a step or 2 below that. So our positioning is good. We're stationary, and we have good judgment. Then the second piece here is when we have pressure like this in the backcourt, remember center, let's just stay at free throw line extended. Don't leave the new trail, to officiate 4, 5, 6 players or so, or more. We need to make sure that we're back there to help. Stay at the free throw line extended. Once we're less than 4 players, we can start heading down towards the new front court. But in this case, we have pressure, so we should stay at free throw line extended. And the last piece is just rules knowledge, and you don't see this very often where the ball hits the backboard on a throw-in, but we need to be ready for crazy plays like this, know the rules, and know how to apply them when a situation like this occurs. And in particular, we're looking at Rule 712 on page 51 of the rule book that talks about the ball being out of bounds when it touches or is touched by 1, a player is out of bounds, 2, any other person, the floor, or any object on or outside a boundary, 3, the supports or back of the backboard, and 4, the ceiling or overhead equipment or supports. And the provision B talks about when a ball passes over a rectangular backboard. So in this particular case, the only one that we're really looking at is number 3 that talks about the ball hitting the supports or the back of the backboard. And when the ball hits the bottom of the backboard or the sides or the top, that's not what that rule reference is talking about. It needs to hit the back. It needs to hit a shot clock, a support, a beam that holds the backboard. Otherwise, the ball is not out of bounds. In this case, allowed to play out properly, good rules knowledge and application. We didn't panic, and we applied the rule to an unusual situation very well. So good mechanics and rules knowledge and judgment by the crew. On this play, let's talk about our front court positioning as the play develops, and then some considerations for how we handle this type of play. So first, trail, let's work a little bit lower. Remember, we're trying to work beneath the matchup so we can see space, and that will really help us when we have this shooting foul situation at the end of this play. We'll be in a really good spot, to view that and pick that up. And then center, same thing. Let's be at free throw line extended. We're way too high here. I realize that we move our way down eventually, but our initial positioning should be at the free throw line extended, and then we can close down towards the end line when the shot goes up, which is what we do here, and that's good. And then we do a nice job at lead of mirroring the basketball. And remember, we want to mirror it, work wide when it works its way out to the sideline like it does here, and then close back down if it works its way over to the other side. So good job by the lead here in mirroring the basketball. Some considerations for shooting foul and coverage and making sure that we get the shooter all the way up and all the way down to the ground. So you'll see in this particular play that the shooter rises in the air, doesn't try to create contact, doesn't try to move forward or jump into the defender, just does a regular jump shot, and the defender who is closing on the shooter actually puts her foot into the landing zone of the shooter, and the shooter does not have room to come down. Therefore, this is a blocking foul on the defender and is properly called for a foul by the trail. So remember that the defender has to obtain or establish legal guarding position prior to the offensive player leaving the floor if they are to get a no call or an offensive foul. In this case, does not establish legal guarding position because she is getting to that spot after the offensive player has left the ground. So this is definitely a shooting foul. This is well done by the trail to pick this up. Again, I think it would be helpful if we worked a little bit lower to pick up that space and then just be stationary, which means we'd be in great position to view this play start, develop, and finish. So good job of taking the shooter all the way up and all the way down, making sure that they have a place to land. If they hit the floor, we need to know why and how they did that, and we do that here. And then remember, let's work on our spot mechanics at the time of the foul. On this play, let's talk about front court coverages, our mechanics, and then some rules considerations. So on this particular play, we have a ball that moves over to the table side, gets dumped in the paint, and then thrown back out, and at the end we have a traveling violation. So from a lead perspective, let's think about initiating a rotation here when the ball gets thrown into the paint to the block area, because if we don't initiate a rotation on a play like this, then the center is responsible for the remaining 4 or 5 players on that side of the court, including the ball, because that is their primary matchup area, their primary coverage area, and they would need to officiate that play. So leads, when the ball gets thrown in the paint like this, we should consider initiating a rotation. Until the lead can get to that side of the court, the center, this is your primary coverage and your primary matchup, and you need to officiate all of it. So we might need to work a little bit lower to officiate this matchup. We kind of stay put, make sure we get lower so we can see this particular play. Leads, if we don't initiate a rotation, then we should not be officiating this play. This is center's area, center's primary. We should not be officiating this play unless we get over there. And even if we do initiate a rotation, we're still not officiating this play because we would be in the process of a rotation while this particular matchup is taking place. So we need to do that. Otherwise, we need to stay out of this play. And then finally, from a mechanics rule perspective, if we do call a traveling violation, which we do in this particular case, we need to put the ball in play on the table side of the lane. We ultimately put it on the far side. So make sure we put the throw in the proper location if we do have a violation that's called. And then from a traveling perspective, remember that we can pick up the pivot foot to pass or shoot. We just can't put it down before we complete that action. We can't pick up the pivot foot to begin a dribble. In this case, the post player throws the ball back out to the wing, which means she can lift her pivot foot. She just can't put it back down prior to completing that pass. And if you look on this play, she lands on 2 feet, a jump stop, okay, establishes the right foot as the pivot foot, then picks it up, and right as she's throwing it back out, she puts it back down. So this is really tight on whether it's a traveling violation. So I would recommend that we stay away from this one, especially from lead. They don't have a good look. This should be center's play. And this is how we want to handle these kinds of plays anyway, where we have a ball that gets thrown into the block, into the paint area where there's a double team or a one-on-one matchup with the basketball. We really should leave the traveling piece to the trail or the center. So they're going to take the waist down and then waist up as it relates to verticality, illegal contact, and so forth. Then we would defer to the lead in that case. Now, in this situation where we don't initiate a rotation, the traveling and the foul, all of that is in the primary coverage area of the center, and the lead should not be involved in this play unless we initiate a rotation, in which by the time we get over there, then we can be involved in the play, and we would particularly be involved with contact on the offensive player or potential illegal contact by the offensive player, and then traveling would be the primary of the center of the trail. However, the lead can call traveling as the lead, but we need to make sure that it is in our primary area of coverage before we get involved in a traveling violation. On this play, let's talk about our free throw mechanics, rebounding, and then some traveling considerations. So you see in this play we have a free throw, it's missed, rebounding action, and then a traveling violation. So let's take a look at our mechanics first. So lead, remember we want to be in 4x4, not right on the end line. We want to be 4 feet off the end line and then 4 feet off of the lane line in that 4x4 position. Center, we're in a pretty good spot. We talked about that on another play on this tape, how we want to be in that initial position and work our way down the 3-point line as we do here. But we don't want to go straight towards the end line. We want to kind of go in a arc type movement, because when we move straight towards the end line, we could end up in the play like we almost do here when the rebound comes our way. And then remember that we have backside rebounding action to officiate as the center on this play. And trail, don't forget that you have to engage on free throw rebounding. You don't just get to have a free pass. You have to be involved on free throw rebounding. That's why we're at the 28-foot mark and we close down at the free throw attempt. And then finally, let's take a look at this traveling violation. Ugly is not necessarily illegal, okay? We need to make sure that we understand the tenets of traveling, what needs to happen and doesn't happen, to have a violation. And this is an ugly looking play. And I would say if you polled everyone in that arena, is this traveling? 99% of the people in the building would say it's traveling. But let's take a closer look. You see that when the player is trying to track down the basketball, by the time she finally gains control, her right foot is the pivot foot, and the right foot never moves. It stays on that tippy toe, and so therefore this is not a violation. It looks ugly, it looks bad, but remember, you can't travel unless you have control of the basketball. And she never really gains control until later in this rebounding action, and by then her right foot maintains contact with the floor. Therefore, this is not a violation. So make sure we pick up the pivot foot, but first, prior to that, let's pick up and maintain, or see if he or she maintains control of the basketball. They cannot travel if they do not have individual control of the basketball. And then we can look at pivot foots and those kinds of things, pivot feet. So make sure that we don't just officiate ugly plays as violations. Make sure we see the whole play start, develop, and finish. On this last play, let's talk front court coverage and positioning and some legal guarding position secondary defender pieces. So you'll see on this play, the ball is right near the table. Lead, we should be mirroring the basketball a little bit more, and then when it comes back to the other side of the court, we can close down. So we should be mirroring the basketball at this point, and then when it comes back to the top of the key, we would close down. Now, because this play goes all the way down the paint nearest the center, this is the center's primary responsibility to rule on. However, we do have potential contact with a secondary defender in the paint. Therefore, this would become the lead's primary responsibility to officiate, because it is involving a play that potentially could be a restricted area play. Now, if we take a close look at this play from a legal guarding position, secondary defender piece, you'll see that the secondary defender establishes initial legal guarding position outside of the restricted area and then maintains it legally at the time of contact. Therefore, a no call is the correct ruling on this play. Now, mechanically, you'll see that the center does the walled up verticality signal, and we do have that signal in our mechanics manual, and you can use it, but we would recommend that the lead be the one that use this signal, because the problem with the center or trail using that signal is that if we do that signal as center or trail and then the lead calls a foul, that is very problematic. So let's leave that mechanic to the lead, although I believe it would be an appropriate signal to use in this situation because the secondary defender does get legal guarding position, is vertical at the time of contact, and legal. Therefore, a walled-up signal would be appropriate to use. Only other thing to mention is trail, maybe work a little bit lower, get beneath the matchup so that you can see space. And then I like how, as the center, we take a step down and then are stationary at the time of contact. And lead, we've closed down to the lane line to view this play. And remember, with a secondary defender in the paint, primary responsibility lies with the lead. But well done on this play by the crew of allowing the defender to play legal defense. Okay, that will do it for training tape 6. A lot of information and topics covered in this particular tape. Again, thank you for your diligence and work this season. Lots to consider. Officiating is a tough job already, and we have to work through COVID and other protocols and expectations. The officials in Minnesota are rising to the occasion. Proud of you all. Keep working hard, and we will talk to you next week.